Alright everyone, now it's time for a totally non-political video. This is just recounting a really fun adventure that I had back in 2008, back in spring break actually, when I was at UVM. Because I wanted to visit my girlfriend, but she was in Texas, which is halfway across the continent. And at the time, I was young and dumb and inexperienced with regards to travel. I had gone briefly to Montreal a couple times in Canada, which is literally right on the border with Vermont, so it doesn't really count as international travel, by the way. Back then, you didn't even need a passport or anything like that to go across the border. Basically walk across. There was no border crisis back then, at least for the northern states. And I'd been to like Hampton Beach and Boston, but that's a very small geographic area. I don't even remember if I had visited Albany yet by that point. I didn't really get that far. You know, we were working class, so travel costs money and whatever. So I figured, look, I've got a student discount for Greyhound bus services. And I thought about flying down. Of course, that's much quicker, but I'm like, because I was young and stupid, I didn't realize that if you shopped around, you could fly down there and back for about the same cost as you would take a bus. Because I was dumb, and I said, well, I get a 10% student discount, so that's even more money than I'm saving. So then, you know, I can buy food next week. So I decided to take a Greyhound bus all the way down non-stop to southern Texas and then back. It's about a 2.5-day trip by bus. I was definitely nodding by the end. Somewhere around Pennsylvania on the way back, I passed out and remember waking up halfway lurching into the aisle because some Amish chick wanted to push through, tap me on the shoulder. But I saw some, let's say, weird shit on this trip. There was one incident, I believe it was in Philadelphia, in which the line is forming to get onto the bus. In front of me, there's this relatively burly-looking dude, and he was East European. You could tell by the accent, it's probably Polish. And all of a sudden, this very large black dude cuts in front of him, just sort of shimmies in front of him, doesn't even address him at all. The Eastern European dude starts getting angry, and he's like balling his fists up. He starts rambling and occasionally saying words, I think, in Polish at him. And one of the people came along. He's like, what's the problem? And he's completely going off and screaming about how this dude is being rude and why do people do this? And he's practically losing it. And finally, the black dude was told, you have to go to the back of the line. But he was angry as fuck. I thought that they were going to come to blows. You see that a lot in Greyhound land. In New York City, the bus driver pissed off the whole bus full of people by rerouting randomly, getting stuck in several traffic jams and getting us there about an hour late, which did cause me to miss my connection to Philadelphia. Thankfully, the next bus was fairly quick, caught up, and then I was about 10 minutes ahead for the next bus and caught it normally. Otherwise, you can have a problem with your ticket potentially being rejected. And of course, as a poor college kid at the time, if that had happened, everybody would have been fucked, well fucked and literally far from home, because I'd have to call up my mom and say, hey, I'm kind of stuck in Philadelphia. This is a problem. Don't know what I would have told my girlfriend at the time. She had a little bit of a short fuse for certain things. But the bus driver, he gets off the bus. And everyone's pissed. He wouldn't let people... There were some people that needed to disembark in Manhattan itself, and he wouldn't let them out even though we were standing still for 5 minutes in traffic. And so they were probably late to their jobs, etc. When I got off, I flipped him off and said, you're a piece of shit. And or I said, you're a fucker. And he got mad and flipped me off too. And there was... There's this black dude with a literal like a basketball shirt and the baseball cap and gold chains and everything. He started laughing and dancing around the dude. He said, yeah, you are a fucker. And the bus driver, I thought he was going to lose it and attack that dude and me at the same time. Well, you probably shouldn't do that in New York City. You might get your finger broken backwards. But again, I'm young and full of testosterone at the time and don't know what the hell I'm doing. So you do stupid things when you're sleep deprived and, hormonal college kid. I also saw a plane crash, believe it or not, on the way back through. I don't think we were still in Texas. I think it was in Oklahoma. I could probably pull up the news story since I know it was roughly late March or early April of 2008. There was a single engine plane crash on one of those days, and I saw the wreckage. All of a sudden, traffic slowed down. There's a little bit of a hill. I didn't see the actual physical crash itself, but I saw the wreckage when it was still smoldering. And you did see it come out of the sky beforehand, and all of a sudden there's smoke furling up in the distance, and like, you know, what's going on, and there are police and fire department people going by. And then, you know, about 20 minutes later when we're rolling through, right next to the road, like if we had been near, I would have gotten a front row seat to seeing a plane smash into the ground and explode otherwise if we had been 20 minutes ahead of schedule or thereabouts. It was just laying in a field maybe 20 yards from the road tops, and it was still smoking. They'd put out the fire, but it was still smoldering. It was crazy. Atlanta was the most crazy place, though, I think. Or was it OK City? I think it was Atlanta. No, it wasn't Atlanta. It was OK City. Sorry, I don't think I went through Atlanta. Or did I? I can't remember whether I went through Atlanta and then bent west on the way there and then curved back up on the way back. I think that I did. Anyway, in one of those two cities, I saw something that's totally hilarious. There was this crip member, and I mean literal crip, dressed in the colors, etc., etc. And there was this like a business lady, and they were waiting outside. I was already on the bus, and they were sort of off to the side next to one of the bus, the transit gates or whatever you'd call them. And she looked like she was like a lawyer or a doctor or something. She's dressed, or she could have been an escort. To be clear, it's possible. And he was trying to teach her gang signs. He was making the gesture, and she was nodding very politely and seemed interested in what he was teaching her for about 15 minutes while we were waiting there. And then finally she went off and I think got on a bus or left, but she seemed to be having a good time. And I was like, man, you see more interesting things in the city. Well, I mean, Vegas is close as far as its culture goes. You have plenty of drug use, gang violence, prostitution, underage drinking and shit. Yeah, Rutland is like a miniature version of Atlanta at this point anyway, so fuck. You know, my home city is kind of fucked up. Got to see lots of Amish people. By the way, they're very polite. If the bus is full up, the Amish are the only people that will sit on their luggage in the middle of the row, so kudos to them. And they're speaking Pennsylvanian Dutch or Thai German or something to each other, and it's very interesting. Amish country, by the way, very, very scenic. It was funny, because when I left, things didn't start greening up like buds on trees and flowers and shit until I got to the southern end of like Illinois or thereabouts. On the way back, though, all of the greenery had crept up into Pennsylvania and the leaves were on the trees. It was only a few days later. And anyway, also saw something really crazy down around the center of the country, when Kentucky or one of those states. There was a cowboy on the bus, or at least he was dressed like one. He had a cowboy hat and the tall leather boots. It looked like he probably intended, he went the wrong way because he was drunk. He intended to go to Nashville to the big party or something like that. He was going to see Dolly Parton concert. But he wouldn't stop talking for like 20 minutes very loudly, trying to ask, I can't remember, I think he was talking to the person next to him in a really loud voice, and they weren't interested, they didn't want to talk to him. And he's trying to talk to other people, and he's just commenting to himself randomly. And finally, a woman a few seats behind him said, "Can't you shut up?" I remember it plain as day. And he's like, "Yes, ma'am." And then he sort of shakes his head, sits down, doesn't say another fucking word. I also sat next to a crackhead. I believe that was in Pittsburgh, if I remember correctly. Probably the most fun part of the trip. And he had the pimp cane and everything, and he was jiggling around, muttering to himself. He was cracked out. He was high at the time. And I thought that was hilarious. It's like, okay, you get on a plane like that, they kick you off. Is for being disruptive and obviously public intoxication and other problems, using drugs. Greyhound, they don't give a fuck. Unless you start assaulting someone or something even crazier. If you're sitting there drunk or high, you smell like the bar, they won't kick you off. I would know. I've seen plenty of these people on Greyhound buses. So that's Tales from the STYX. I thought you might get a kick out of some of these Greyhound bus stories. Of course, I passed out on the way back from severest tiredness. It's basically 6 days without sleep. You nod off occasionally, but you haven't had a night's sleep per se for a very long time. When I got back, basically I passed out and slept for 10 hours. It was fun, I got to see half of the continental United States from bus, and there are some wild things to see, like the orange, muddy water in Oklahoma. I saw a cactus for the first time right as we were going out of Dallas, and I'm like, is that a cactus beside the road? Oh, that's right, we're in Texas now. That's normal down here. It took my body a minute to adjust, and yeah. And some cities are nicer than others. San Antonio's nice and clean and looks nice. Springfield, Illinois, at least back then, probably not by now because of that state, was nice. Boston is actually one of the better looking cities in the United States that I've been through. I mean, Oklahoma City's a fucking hellhole. Atlanta's a shithole. Most of the others, Dallas is, it's okay, although we got on the ghetto bus and it broke down halfway out on the interstate and we had to get picked up by another bus. So I was, again, an hour late to my destination. That didn't go over so well. That's about all. Peace out.